NFC South here, we have the Atlanta Falcons with a B minus. You know, I really did not like their draft class. Trice and Dorless, I think they got at good value, but Rook over Johnny Newton was very questionable to me. They did get Darnell Mooney, who I do think will fit really well with Kirk Cousins, but I think this team will elevate because of the new coaches and because of the quarterback. But when you're looking at it from a sheer roster perspective, how much really did they improve during the offseason, through the draft, and then also through their free agency class? I would say not a ton outside of Kirk.
No, yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that 1,000%. I think just the biggest thing is like the biggest deterrent was if again Michael Penix, we get it for the future potentially, but we've already harped on it, and I'm not going to like keep part. It's just when you take a project guy, you want them to be on the more raw side of things, and very obviously that's not where Penix stands. Penix was arguably the most pro-ready guy, so from that perspective, and how much money you're going to be paying him, it's like that has to knock your off-season grade. Where again, like we were just talking about, like if the Falcons could have just gotten an all-pro type of player, whatever it would have been, whatever position group with that 8th overall pick, you really shot yourself with the chance to go and shoot yourself on a miracle Super Bowl run with the way that this roster is built. But they very clearly didn't value doing that. They valued the future more. And again, I get it, but sometimes when you play things too safe, you miss your window. And that very well might have been what we just witnessed with the Falcons off of literally just one decision. I don't mean to be like critical about it, but it's just the truth of how things can go in the NFL sometimes, right? We know windows open and close very quickly. And I think it's just a little bit cute to try to play with that 8th overall pick when you had a chance to really load up with the future blue chip guy, whether it was Latu, Turner, Terrion Arnold. Right? They could have done so many things in that spot. And again, granted, where Terrion went, we're saying Terrion that early, that's crazy.
But you could
again,
trade
for
back.
how we valued Terrion and knowing what he could have brought to this team, it makes a lot more sense. Putting him next to AJ Terrell, you get my point. There's just a lot of things they could have done that they didn't do. And on top of that, wasn't a fan of very many of the draft picks. I thought even, again, I know Braylon Trice has his fair share of stands at this point, Washington fans, but me personally, I never was very big on Braylon Trice, especially post-combine. It's just, I don't know how well his game is going to translate to the league. Just really wasn't a big fan of too many of their picks. It is what it is. I think Rook's going to provide really good depth, and I think he'll be a good starter in the future, but that just goes back to what we already were saying, mortgaging a potential Super Bowl window now for one in the future when you already potentially had one. I just don't really understand the vision with that personally.
Well, another spin on it is like, with the 8th overall pick, you have a new head coach and he's a defensive head coach. You could easily get the best defensive player in the draft or trade back a couple spots and still get the best defensive player in the draft. I wonder how lined up the GM and the head coach were on that pick, because if I'm the head coach and I'm looking at the roster, evaluating what it is, and know that we desperately need D-line help, why the fuck would I ever want a quarterback when I just signed one for 4 years?
Well, and here's my thing that I'm going to say too, that this is where I think, and this is where I don't ever hear anybody talking about this discourse, but this is where I personally stand. Like, look, I get it. Okay. So if we're going to look at it in the most bleak, like, here's how it would work, even if it doesn't work terms, like, well, what if Kirk gets injured this year and Penix has to step in? Well, to me, the reality is Penix is not going to take you to the promised land his rookie year. Like, we're asking a lot out of Penix at that point. Is that likely? Absolutely not. So here's my thing. You could have just waited till next year if you're not in on Kirk and been like, all right, we gave Kirk a potential blue chip guy. We really loaded up this roster. I don't think Kirk's going to be the guy long term. I think then you pull the trigger next year with your first round pick. If it's a later pick where then you get you didn't spend as much capital, but it was still the same mission, still the same plot at hand. I just think they forced their hand on what they could have waited for way too early.
Moving on to our next team in the NFC South, we have the Carolina Panthers with a B. So I liked the Jonathan Brooks pick. And that was about it. I really liked a lot more what they did in free agency. I think they solidified the interior of their offensive and defensive line. I know Panthers fans are all over the Jadeveon Clowney. I was thinking of Jatavion Sanders.
I know, that was hilarious.
I was screwing it up. But I think the Panthers definitely raised the floor of their team, and I actually really do like what they did with the running back room. Rashad Penny, Jonathan Brooks, Chuba Hubbard. I don't know. Miles Sanders has to be the odd man out at this point. But
yeah, he's fourth on the depth chart right now, if anyone's curious.
I don't love what the Panthers necessarily did in the wide receiver room. I get the Deontay Johnson trade. I think it was a good one to make. But at the same time, I don't know if Leggett being your wide receiver 3 or 2 with Adam Thielen, I just don't love what they did for Bryce Young this offseason outside of securing the interior. I think they should have went and got a guy like a T. Higgins or even a fucking Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, no. So I'm going to touch on everything you just said a little bit more in a sec. I just have to, it's funny. We got to do our victory lap. Every time you remind me, it's only right. I mean, oh, I'm an idiot. Miles Sanders is going to be fantastic in this offense. What are you talking about? They overspent. I'm going to tell you all a little something. Come here. Spending money on running backs is a thing of the past. If the Chiefs and the Patriots didn't teach anybody anything, guys, I don't know what to tell you guys. Spending big money on running backs, it's a thing of the past. I give teams like the Eagles the pass where you already have everything else built and you're taking a shot. Those are the one examples of teams that get those where I'm going to give you that pass. Spending that money on Miles Sanders was not the play. But back on topic of this season, because that was something we addressed last season that already has come to fruition. I think when we look at the Panthers, it's kind of like, just like you're saying, I think they have a very good chance to raise the floor a lot from what they were last year. But realistically, they have an incredibly minimal shot to make the playoffs. And I think I would still picture them as like a 6-7 win team. But again, really, what more could you ask for if you're a Panthers fan? I mean, I think, in my opinion, they actually had a very, very productive offseason. You added a lot of defenders that are actually going to be immediate impact, potential long-term starters for you guys. On the offensive side, you addressed the most important part of the O-line from what wasn't addressed before. You really started filling it out for Bryce. You're not, no more excuses at this point in terms of how he plays behind the O-line. That O-line should be able to keep him clean most of the time. It's now on this receiving core. But at the same time, when you had Deontay Johnson and Xavier Leggett the same season, right, the expectations are rising for Bryce. We need to see Bryce make a jump next year. I know this receiving core is nothing fantastic, but Johnson, Thielen, and Leggett is definitely a solid little 3 for you, especially, in the fact that the Panthers, I do believe, are probably going to try to run the ball a lot more this year, try to get Jonathan Brooks incorporated. It'll be very probably a balanced attack. I mean, yeah, I was on the, maybe the side of this where not a lot of people are big fans of it. I think adding DJ Wanham is actually going to be kind of a sneaky good addition for them. I think he can play in this defense really well, produce for them. And Derek Brown has really, really come into his own this last season, really became one of the best defenders in the entire league. If Derek Brown can make another big leap this year or even just stay at that same standard he was at last year, all of a sudden, Panthers floor raises to like 6-7 wins. And again, if you're a Panthers fan, really, I think all you can ask for.
So I'll say this. I still think their ceiling is like 6-7 wins. And I'll say this as well. Jonathan Brooks is probably going to help Bryce Young more than Xavier Leggett is this year. I think leaning on the run game to take all the pressure off Bryce, because that run game last year was atrocious. Atrocious. So giving Jonathan Brooks, a guy who we know when healthy can be dominant, to a guy like Bryce Young who had all the pressure on him last year, I think is going to have more of an impact this year than Leggett does. Obviously, if you look at Leggett's numbers in college, last year was his first year with more than 18 receptions in a year. So definitely still raw and has a lot to learn.
No, yeah, Jay Brooks can really truly be kind of like, I'm sure you agree with this. He's kind of like, if he can stay healthy, he really is like an Aaron Jones 2.0 very much type of mold, which is perfect for exactly what Bryce needs. That security blanket in the backfield, who also is a very good runner when you put the ball in his hands.
All right, moving into the New Orleans Saints, we have them with a B. Obviously, they didn't have a ton of money to play around with in the free agency class, but they did have a good draft class. Dobbs, how are you feeling about the upcoming season?
So again, I think the draft class really just it carried the grade more than anything. Because again, like you said, they had their hands tied. It's not really much they could do. Here's what I will say though, because it kind of went under the radar and unnoticed. But Saints fans I know noticed, and Niners fans are going to notice soon when he's making a lot of plays for their team. I was really not a fan of letting Isaac Yiadom go for how cheap that he got re-signed for on the Niners. Like, look, when we had injuries last year and he had to come step in and play that slot role or play that outside role, he was genuinely a top 20 corner in the league at all times from a grading standpoint, from a metric standpoint. Isaac Yiadom was fantastic last year. So we let him go for basically a bag of peanuts to the Super Bowl contenders out of the NFC last year. That one really hurt. And I know Saints fans will be able to relate to what I'm saying because that's one that I'm really still not over. But look, on the side of that, I really think I appreciate. Very happy with letting go of Marcus May. Yeah, we tried it. It didn't work. Jordan Howden played really good for a rookie. Seeing Jordan Howden come in and take that role, letting us trust the young guys for once, actually give the young guys a shot. I'm all for that. Let's keep doing that. Our linebacker core worries me because DeMario is as amazing as he is. He's getting not very old, but he's getting on the much older side of things. And we know how things are in the NFL, right? Like 1 year you can go from being one of the best players of your position to just falling off of age. I worry about that with DeMario. And then outside of that, Pete Werner and then Willie Gay, unless Willie Gay can make a big jump or Pete Werner can get back to his old rookie sophomore year form, we're in for a rough time here with the linebacking core. But on the interior, I like the additions we made in the draft. I'm trying to remember, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy we added from Northern Iowa, I think is going to actually make a really big jump.
Christian Boyd.
To this D line. Actually, yeah, Christian Boyd's going to be able to help us out a lot. I do really believe. Paulson Adebo, I think, is going to make another big jump this year. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I don't know where we're going to end up playing him, but I like the corner. I like the DB room for sure. As far as the O-line goes, especially after losing Andrews Pete, definitely more questions than answers. But at least with Fuaga in here, I'm very confident that we're starting to actually focus on it again. We're going to start addressing it again. The reality is this. Unless Derek Carr really turns it around like how he did at the end of the year last year, the Saints will probably have a similar year to what they did last year. But I will say, I do hold some optimism with the new offensive coordinator coming, Clint Kubiak, that he really could elevate this team to a point where we're actually kind of surprised and we can't even believe as Saints fans the productivity we're watching on offense. Best case scenario for us, but I stay optimistic, but I also stay realistic. We could very much witness a season very similar to last year. This offseason is going to have to tell its story during the season because I still don't know how to feel about everything altogether.
You guys probably have the funniest cornerback or quarterback room in the NFL. Derek Carr, Kellen Mond, Nathan Peterman, and Spencer Rattler. Is Spencer Rattler like a realistic option for QB of the future?
I'll say this. You know what? If we find a way to make it work, he has skill set that I really do love. It's just about getting him to the point where we get rid of all the kinks in his game. But I'm all in for right now.
All right. Chase Young and Equanimous St. Brown also additions to the team. I think I would have liked the Saints to make another addition at the pass catcher because I know you have A.T. Perry and Rashid Shaheed, but you're kind of still leaving Olave out on an island there, which is tough.
No, and again, the way I see it is like I think Olave at his best will always be if we can just get him primarily in the slot where we have that outside guy for him. Hopefully that can end up being, like we're saying, a Shaheed and A.T. Perry combo. That would be ideal to me with keeping Chris in the slot. But again, as far as things go right now, I really don't know how to feel. If Kendre Miller can make a big jump this year too, I mean, look, this offense has a lot of low-key sleepers. I will say as a Saints fan, we do. Rashid, he still doesn't have the respect he deserves. We have guys. It's just a matter of getting them in the right position. And it's more than anything a matter of Derek Carr needs to make a leap this year, or we are going to have very immediate questions to answer next year. And there's just no two ways about it. Every Saints fan, everybody across the league can agree with that.
Moving into the last team of the NFC South, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a B. So everyone got a B except the Falcons got a B minus here. So, yeah, that we talked about this with when we did our Buccaneers interview. You know, we like what the Buccaneers already have, and they're one of those franchises similar to the Colts where they like to re-sign their own guys. They brought in Bryce Hall, Jordan Whitehead. They, tagged Antoine Winfield, which I think was a great addition. I think getting Baker Mayfield for the money that they got him for was really good. And then they addressed the interior offensive line in the draft. They got Chris Braswell. They need to kind of, replenish that defensive line. Tyke Smith as a safety, not bad. I don't love him. I really do like the addition of Bucky Irving to kind of give, a little bit of a different pace to a Rashad White. And then adding a guy like a Jalen McMillan to their wide receiver room, just give him a little bit more versatility, which is actually, with Godwin, Evans, McMillan, and Trey Palmer, I do really like what they have going for them there.
No, I was going to say, like, to echo that, especially knowing that I saw it was announced recently that Chris Godwin's going back to the slot full time. I think if you're the Bucs, you can say, and then Trey Palmer just burning dudes down the seam on the outside. Or down the sideline on the outside, I should say, on go balls. Yeah, all of a sudden, and then Jalen McMillan too, like we're saying. I mean, Jalen McMillan, I think, can come in and he could really take that wide receiver 3 spot quicker than a lot of people think. No disrespect to Trey Palmer. Trey Palmer might just be a little bit more of a gadget in this offense than Jalen McMillan could be at his ceiling. You know what I mean? I will say though, as we were talking about too, when we did our Bucs interview, this interior O line minus Graham Barton, because I'm very confident that Graham Barton is going to translate to being a good pro. But outside of him, the guard situation right now is real rough if neither of these guys make a jump. And as we said, they're young. We can see O-line making huge jumps that rookie to sophomore year. But it's not like it's often. And if they don't make that jump, that interior is going to be shaky. I mean, it's just the bottom line. And for the amount of money you sign Baker to, right, we know Baker's susceptible to getting hurt. Like, I think I would have wanted to see them invest a little bit more in the interior, whether it was through the draft or through free agency. But I get it. You also would be saying, well, then a lot of the draft capital recently on this interior was just wasted, and we don't want to just give up on these guys yet. I get that as well. I definitely get that as well. I think more than anything, I worry about the DB depth, with the Bucs. But I get it that they're just taking their shots on young guys right now more than anything, which is literally that's exactly what they're doing. But just like they're doing with the interior O-line, if that ends up not working out and you're already a year into Baker's contract, all of a sudden we're getting into a sticky situation. There's depth and like we say, like, you kept Todd Bowles, and Todd Bowles, there's a real good chance it's not that guy for them long term. So there's a lot of questions to be answered.
You kind of got to ride it out with Baker and Bowles. Like, once Baker leaves, Bowles is gone too, or once Bowles is gone, Baker's gone. Because it's just, in my opinion, what's the point of getting rid of one and keeping the other? Because Baker probably won't be your long-term guy. Just strictly off the fact of not saying Baker can't be a long-term franchise guy. It's more of the fact of the Bucs offense is a little bit old in terms of the wide receiver position. Like, once Mike Evans goes, I think there's just kind of like a bigger drop off than people will expect. So it's almost like we know the Bucs don't hit the reset button, but they might have to.
No, absolutely. That's the biggest thing is, as far as building the regime around Baker, that's why I was a little bit more loose, because if that I'm only grading based off what clearly the vision is, right? Like that for that being the vision, I gave a fair enough grade. But again, the reality is things could come crumbling down very quickly with the way that they've built this roster as of right now.
Moving into the